Well, as we look ahead to the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris, it's important to look back on the history of the Games. Melissa actually talked with the authors of a new book called Played, The Games of the 1936 Berlin Olympics. It unveils more about the internal struggles of Olympic athletes during a hard time in history. Take a look.
We're joined by authors and movie producers Glenn Allen and Richard Kaufman. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. As you know, we're an NBC station, so we're looking very forward to the big games coming up. And I was super excited when I heard about this book that you both have written, a very, very historic point in the Olympic Games itself. But for those who may not be familiar, tell us what made you want to write this book? Why tell this story further?
Well, with the games coming up, we thought it was important to talk about all these things that happened back in '36, all these issues that were going on at the time, and so many of them are still at large today. Racism, sexism, misinformation, manipulation of athletes, the confluence of sports and politics. And Rick actually brought this to my attention back in the mid-'90s. And at first I thought, oh, sports and politics, this is really interesting. But then we got into the characters, and we got a chance to research the bigger story.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that too, because there are so many timeless themes in this story in itself that still relates to this day. Let's talk a little more too about those struggles that these athletes were facing. Walk us through and kind of remind us of where they were at in that point in history.
Well, these were basically kids. And they were athletes that wanted to win and go on the biggest stage and win. And not just the American athletes, we concentrate on some of the German athletes too. And, it really comes down to the humanizing of these people that we follow. These are real people. And we show their depth, and especially the kids, because they didn't care about the politics. The politics were thrust on them, and they weren't happy about it. They wanted to win. They wanted to go to the Olympics, and they wanted to meet people. They wanted to meet other cultures, and that really is a big part of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the newer generations, right, that may not be as familiar with this story, kind of give us a little Cliff Notes version, if you will, of what occurred in 1936 at the Olympics that makes it such a historic moment.
Well, of course, Hitler's rise to power. Everyone knows about that. Everyone knows about Jesse Owens. Most people do. But what they may not know is that, there were many other athletes, Jewish athletes, a couple who were kicked off the teams once the Americans decided to participate in the Olympics. There was a big debate about a boycott. Should we go? Shouldn't we go? And the Germans had a Jewish athlete on their team to prove to the Americans that everything was going to be fine. And as soon as we got on the boat to go over there, she was kicked off the team. There were also two Jewish runners on the American team. Marty Glickman is one of them, who people might know. And the morning of their 4x100 relay, they were kicked off the team as to appease Hitler. And some people may not know that story.
Wow. Okay, I'm getting goosebumps actually just kind of hearing the reoccurrence of this. And you'd spoken to the politics, the propaganda, right? It surrounded these historic games, but you had mentioned these athletes, they were there for the pure spirit of sport, right? Like they were there to be a part of the unifying force, which is the games, right? It brings everyone together, but yet there was still a cloud surrounding this historic event. Definitely something that we cannot forget as we go into the Olympics, and especially as we still face some of these similar challenges to this very day. How long did it take you, though, to learn some of these backstories as well, that some of them which you just shared with us?
Well, I would say in toto, our research was about 25 years. Wow. And but we wanted to get it right, and we wanted to tell the truth, and we wanted to tell these stories also in an entertaining manner. And, because we have a lot of dialogue, and, we made up the dialogue. That's what makes it a novel. But, it is true what is said in the book. It's not a history book. It's entertainment. But you know, if we didn't get these stories right, then it just would have been another sports book.
Yeah.
But what really changes, what really is the difference here is we concentrate on the people. And they are living in an hysterical time, a time that's not really talked about much. You know, the Weimar Republic, that mid-30s, where we were going through the Depression. I mean, not a lot of people know exactly what was happening in that decade. You know, the buildup of the Nazi regime, and so we try to set the reader right in the middle of it all.
Wow.
And we would not have been able to do that if we didn't spend the time doing the research properly.